Hello, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to this live employer masterclass from the Changing Education Group. My name is Amos Madra, your host and careers advisor here at the Changing Education Group. Thank you to all of you for taking part in this live session. Glad to welcome some of you from Dubai who stayed up. I know it's pretty late there for you, but thank you very much indeed for joining us for this live masterclass here from the Changing Education Group. Joining me today is Luke Chadwick. That name, I'm sure, rings a bell to many of you. Very familiar name. Yes, it is. Luke is from the Football Factory, but most of you will know Luke for his time at playing for Manchester United. Luke is head coach and director of community growth at Football Fun Factory. So Luke in the past played for United, but now with the Football Fun Factory, his role is to head up their mission to identify and recruit the best possible head coaches to join their team. The Football Fun Factory was created to provide incredible childhood football experiences for boys and girls of all ages and ability levels, eliminating barriers to opportunity. How good does that sound? And it's so relevant for today with all that's going on. Luke, a warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thank you for that fantastic introduction, Amos.
Yeah. So again, Luke, when I think about, the past year and how a lot of young people have had to deal with some of the difficulties, and I'm sure in your role you've had to coach and support young people, as well as even other coaches in mentoring and helping those young people. What would you say the past year has been like for you?
Yeah, it's been obviously a struggle for everyone, really. I think, of course, for young people, some of the children we coach, between the preschool kids between 2 and 5, they've spent more of their lives in lockdown than they have in the real world, really. So it's been a challenge for our coaches, of course, who haven't been able to run our programs because of the lockdowns, etc. It's been a real tough time, but at the same time, a great opportunity of reflection, really, for all of us, where we've probably spent more time at home than ever, probably an opportunity to spend time with those closest to us to sort of rebuild them relationships as well. So it's been certainly a strange year. There's been some real lows, like there has for everyone in a working life. But in terms of a family side of things, it's been an opportunity to reconnect with those that I love the most. My children, who are both teenagers now, who probably I wouldn't have had the opportunity to spend as much time with them as I had over the last year. That's been a real blessing. But certainly pleased now that we're starting to return to some sort of normality, and hopefully things will be back to normal very soon.
Yeah, definitely. And it's incredible to think when, you're talking about some of the preschool children that you're working with, to think that they've spent most of their life in lockdown. It's crazy just to think, how the impact of the whole pandemic's had on so many lives. But then equally, I like that you can look at the silver lining in the cloud and, find the opportunity to reflect, think back on, what the past year's been, and putting your priorities in place. Family, spending time with obviously children, especially at that age now where they're in their teenage years, where they're trying to get a grasp of what life is and where they're going and what they plan to do. So for those watching this who are not sure about your career and what you did in the past, could you tell us about your footballing career and how you got into the Football Fun Factory?
Yeah. So I started my football career as a 14-year-old boy. I was scouted. I live in a little village in Cambridgeshire, but I was somehow scouted to play for Manchester United at the age of 14. So spent time up there before moving full-time when I left school at 16 to go and live in Manchester and start my journey in professional football. So I was incredibly fortunate enough to play for one of the biggest clubs in the world up to the age of 23. During the 2000-2001 season, I was actually in and around the first team squad, made enough appearances in the Premier League to win a Premier League medal, and it was obviously memories that I'll never forget. On leaving Manchester United, I went on loan to a couple of clubs. I went and played for Reading and then at Burnley before moving on to West Ham United. Spent a really good season there where we were promoted from the Championship up to the Premier League. Then on my travels again to Stoke City before going to Norwich City, then MK Dons, and then finished my career at my hometown club, Cambridge United. So I was certainly a journeyman footballer. I'd experienced the highs and lows, played at the biggest club in the world and some of the smallest clubs as well. So it was an incredible experience being a professional footballer. It came to the end. My career ended when I was around 34 years old, and that was a real challenging time for me, sort of accepting that my football career was over, not really knowing what I was going to go on to next. Sort of went down the coaching route, completed my coaching qualifications before starting a role at a professional football club, but didn't really enjoy it. I probably hadn't really accepted that my football career had come to an end, and I was still sort of searching for what the world was for me now, really, without doing the one thing that I loved doing all my life, which was playing football. So I had the opportunity. A couple of my colleagues started up the Football Fun Factory, which was just, like as the name suggests, just built all around fun and really festering a real love for football at the youngest ages. And it was a real opportunity to be involved in something quite special in terms of we use football as a vehicle to develop positive life skills just as much as football teams, really looking to celebrate teamwork, communication, sportsmanship, probably more so than we do the little boy or little girl that scores 20 goals in a session. So it really reminds me of my time at 6, 7, 8 years old when I started playing football. I can certainly not remember any of the coaching advice I was given, but I can certainly remember it being a huge amount of fun, and I would run around with a smile on my face. And that's the reason that I fell in love with football and the reason that I was lucky enough to have a career in the game. So that's sort of a whistle-stop tour of the last 25 years or so now. So now it's just a case of, we're, like you mentioned at the start, building the Football Fun Factory, and hopefully for that to spread over the world in the coming years.
You know, there's so many questions that I want to ask you when I think about that journey that you went through. You know, for me, I think some of the most intriguing aspects would be, you know, that aspect of you being a journeyman, going through different teams, and, you know, being, you know, sometimes just it's hard, especially when you know it's time to move on to another club, your time's coming to an end. How do you move on, and how do you bounce back again? You know, because it's difficult, especially, you know, for your own self-confidence, trying to build yourself up again, especially trying to get back into the first team, having that hunger to continue. And then as well, when I think about coming to the age of retirement, when you thought, you know, this is it, when your body just couldn't give you any more, you know, how you deal with that. You know, there's just so many different questions that I want to ask you, and I want to try and go through that with the time that we have. But let's go back to the start again, because not everybody makes it as a footballer. There's so many people that want to go into this career, and it's not something that many people can do. You're someone who can say, I've been there, done it, played at the biggest stadium, you know, Old Trafford, you know, all those fans watching the biggest nights, winning a Premier League, and being in, you know, coming into contact with some of the biggest stars that you can imagine, you know. But let's go right back to the start. What sort of dedication did it take for Manchester United to look at you and say, we want you? Yeah,
I mean, obviously it takes a lot of dedication, but I think looking back, you probably don't see it as dedication because it's what you love doing so much. So it was always a pleasure playing football. I remember I went to my first live football game probably at the age of 6 or 7 years old, and my dad took me to watch Cambridge United play, my local club. And it was from that moment really where I was just encapsulated by the game of football. I just fell in love with it, being so close to the players, hearing the crowd singing, smelling the turf, coming, like just going to a stadium. It was mind blowing for me. And I just thought I absolutely loved that. I couldn't wait to go back, and I'd spend my whole time in the garden or in the living room before my mum shouted at me playing football, sort of just wanting to be one of them people or pretending that I was playing at the ground. So I just spent every waking moment really that I had spare time playing football in the garden with my friends at the park. And it was, I don't really, obviously you have to make sacrifices when you start playing football, when your mates are going out, when you get a bit older and you're sort of them teenage years. But I never really saw it as that, because I just loved what I was doing so much, just really enjoyed running around. And it, like I mentioned there, it was them earliest experiences playing for my first sort of grassroots club at 7, 8 years old. It was such a fun experience. That was probably the reason why I wanted to carry on and keep playing. And it's them early experiences that are so important, and them being a positive one that sort of helps you develop that love for the game. And that love for the game has fortunately never left me, despite obviously some good times, some really bad times as well. But I still love football. Even at my age now, I still try and have a run round and try and play, but the legs certainly feel it a lot more now than they used to, that's for sure.
The heart's willing, but the knees say not a chance.
Exactly.
Plenty of deep heat. So tell us about, your time at Old Trafford, Sir Alex Ferguson. What did that mean to you, coming into contact with him? What was it like speaking to him first time?
Oh, like, the man is an absolute genius. It's an absolute privilege to say that I played under Sir Alex, that I worked for Manchester United as a football club. It's such a special organisation. I first went to the club for a trial when I was 14 years old, went up there for a week, stayed in a hotel with other boys from around the country, similar age to me, spent a week training, then finished off with a game against Nottingham Forest. I can still remember it now. And Sir Alex was actually at that game. He took such an interest in sort of every age group at the club and played in the game. The minibus dropped me back at Manchester Piccadilly train station. I got on a train back to Cambridge. It probably took me about 5 hours. My mum picked me up from the train station, and the first thing she said to me was Alex Ferguson had phoned her up that afternoon asking her permission if I'd sign for the club. And when you hear that at the age of 14, there's obviously only one club you're going to sign for. And it's the small details that he went to that make him such an incredible man. He had everyone, whether it be a first team player like Roy Keane or Ryan Giggs or the dinner lady or the kit man, all pulling in the same direction to achieve something special, where obviously the whole club was more important than one individual. And he'd done that to a T, really. And it was the genius with the relationships that he built with people, and you'd want to run through a brick wall for him. There was no better feeling than the manager saying, well done, and just a simple well done could make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. And it was more his human qualities that I remember than obviously a huge football knowledge as well, an incredible manager, an incredible coach. But it's the way that he treated people so well that will always stick in my mind. And I think in my case, and a lot of the players that have ever been at Manchester United owe the club so much in terms of the values that it instills in you from such a young age. It stands you in good stead, whether you end up being an incredible player for Manchester United, you're a journeyman footballer like me, or you don't make a career in football. It still gives you that upbringing and grounding to achieve something in life.
Yeah, just hearing that story, hearing you talk, is making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Just to think that you're in the presence of such a great person like Sir Alex. I am biased, I'm a United fan, but still, football aside, just to think what he's achieved and his mentoring, coaching, and what that can do. And I like that analogy that you've used. And it's been said by lots of players. He would always make sure that everybody knew that they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. They were all in coherence, and everybody was in tandem in terms of the direction that they were going into. And from the dinner lady right through to the kitman to the players, everybody was on board and going in the same direction. And he'd use the analogy of the birds. He'd stop training a herd, and he'll tell them to look at the birds and say, you see that? That's what we should be doing. And it's the small things like that. And then hearing you talk about, as soon as he saw you play, within 10 minutes, getting in touch with your mum. It reminds me of the story when he signed Cristiano Ronaldo. the pre-match, the game in Portugal, after the game, he pretty much stood outside the dressing room waiting for Ronaldo to come out, and just literally signed him there and then. So it's certainly a man of action, and he took steps quickly. What skills did you learn from your experience with him, and what can you share with our audience today that they can perhaps just take and apply to their own lives?
I think the values that get installed at that club, the bare minimum is that you work as hard as you possibly can, and Sir Alex was sort of the ringleader from that. He was always the first at the training ground, the last to leave, and it's just that sort of real emphasis on hard work gets you everything, really. If you haven't got that, no matter how talented you are, you can't really achieve to a really high level unless you're prepared to put that work in. But what it meant to play for the club as well, in terms of the honesty, demanded honesty from everyone, that sort of humility, regardless whether you're at the best club in the world, you treat everyone with the respect that they deserve. And I think it's them little life skills that him, not just him, all the staff and everyone brought into that made the club so special. I sort of went to a lot of different clubs as a youngster, sort of getting asked to go there, but there was nothing quite like the feeling of Manchester United, in terms of everyone was so always so pleased to see you. Everyone seemed so happy to be there, so enthusiastic, and sort of everything was put there for you to make sure that your life was as easy as it possibly could be. And it was a special sort of culture and environment that he built from the very foundations of the club. He knew everything that was going on. As a first team player, I was there in the canteen at Carrington, and there'd be under 10, under 11 academy players there, and the manager would know each one of their names. He'd know a little detail about them. And it's just sort of them small little details that can not look like anything, but mean so much to young people that are coming through at the club, or an old lady who's serving the dinner, but he'd take that time to have a little chat with her and make her feel $1 million. Now, I think it's that real relationship building that he was the master of, and he had it down to an art form, and it weren't for any sort of, it weren't false, it was all genuine. He genuinely cared for all the people that were in his organisation.
Yeah, and I think that's an important lesson for all of us to take on board. It's putting people first, and remembering it is about people. It's about working with people, whatever career you go into. And again, it's that collaboration that allows us to be at our very best. So professional career, you got to go to a few teams, became a journeyman. I really do admire people who are able to, when they know that that's their time at the end of one club, pick themselves up. They know they've been transferred. Agent comes to them, tells them, right, this is your new team. What do you reckon? Do you want to join? Yes. And then you move on. Tell us a bit about that, because I think this is an important lesson for our audience to learn.
Yeah, I think obviously I went to Manchester United, got to play a few games, which was, I never really expected that going up there. I sort of had the main quality that I had, or the exceptional quality that I had as a youngster, was I was incredibly fast, sort of freakishly fast, of running with the ball, without the ball, and sort of suffered a few injuries and maybe lost a bit of that speed. And as a winger, without that speed, I wasn't the same player. I was competing with the likes of David Beckham and Ryan Giggs, and the only way that I could sort of be in that, be spoken the same breath of them, was when I could run as fast as I could back then. So without that, didn't have enough. And the manager was completely honest with me and said, without that speed, you're not going to be at a level to play for this club. And I don't think you'll be at a level to play at the top end of football, which was obviously really hard to hear. But because I had such incredible respect for the man, I appreciate his honesty, and then sort of moved on to pastures new. In my case, growing up, all I ever dreamed of was being a footballer. I didn't dream of playing for Manchester United. I dreamt of just playing football, really. So in terms of when I stepped away from Manchester United, obviously I loved the club and it had done incredible things for me, but it didn't feel like it was the end of the world, if you know what I mean. It was I was excited about moving on to a new challenge, experiencing something different. So my journey in football took me up and down to all different levels of the game. But I can honestly say that I loved every part of that experience, because it was being a professional footballer, whether it was running out at Old Trafford or running out at MK Dons or running out at Cambridge United. It all felt the same to me, because it was sort of the dream come true. I was being a professional footballer. I remember sort of when you're a kid and we're 14, 15, I was just 1 minute of playing a professional football would have been enough. That was just to be on that pitch. So to do it as many times as I've done, there was never a point where there's obviously real down times when you're injured or out the team, but in terms of being moved on and shipped off to other clubs, it was always more excitement than disappointment of just going to experience something different on what was my journey. Obviously everyone's journey is different. My journey took me here, there and everywhere. Some people's journeys in football keep them at the same club for the whole career. There's no sort of right and wrong in that. It's enjoying your own journey, and I certainly done that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that comes across, and you can hear as you reflect back on it, the times that you had, and some difficult, but each point, I'm sure, had a how can I say, each situation that you went through was a lesson to learn. Whether it was injuries, whether it was not being picked on the first team, it was something to learn. And again, it makes me think about the difference between being a professional and being an amateur, and maybe playing for it's fun. You clearly enjoy what you do, but I can imagine as a professional there's a different sort of dedication that's required. Can you talk to us about the sort of routine that you would go through as a professional versus when you were just learning and at grassroots level?
Yeah, I think that the game's changed a lot over my time of starting a career and when I finished my career in terms of everything that goes into it. But I was always like to think of someone who done everything they possibly could. Don't get me wrong, I suffered from many injuries throughout my career, but always was gutted that I was injured and used that time to try and come back stronger every time. So I think it does take a lot to stay in football for a long time. It does build a lot of resilience. At the same time, I probably look back on my career and football takes over your life as a professional footballer, which obviously has to happen. But I probably, when I finished my career, didn't only saw myself as a footballer, really. It was always about football. I probably hadn't taken that opportunity to know myself or understand myself completely, because it was always football. That was the be all and end all. So I think in terms of being a footballer, it does take incredible dedication. But I think if I was to do my time again and be a footballer again, I would have took the time to learn about myself and understand myself a little bit more, not just see myself as a footballer, because football is a very short career. You're sort of out the game at the age of 35, 36, 37. So it can, and it left me in quite a tough situation when I finished, because I didn't really understand what was left. So I think, of course, it takes huge dedication, and it helps that you love what you do. I think if you can find a career where you love what you're doing, it makes it a lot easier to have longevity in it. I think you need that. But in terms of, you've got to have other things in your life as well to interest you. So it's not always the same thing year after year after year, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. It's planning for the future. And I think that's something that more football teams are trying to put in place for their players to help them transition from the professional game to post professional playing. And it's difficult. You look at stories in the past, how players have really found it difficult. And I think, clubs have seen that and, thought we can't just leave players to go out there and to figure it out. So they've got a responsibility, I believe, in helping players transition into the new normal. and which is difficult because, you know, from, you can imagine just a competitive game where every day you're training, you're preparing, to suddenly where life slows down. It's like, you know, what do you do? What does it mean? And at 34, that's nothing. You're still really very young. Life is still only just starting, but it can feel like the world is crumbling for you at that stage. Thank you for sharing that with us. What would you say? I mean, you've already told us that you wished you'd planned better for your time after your professional career. But what I'm trying to say is I want to just reflect a bit more on this area. I want to, you know, just get this point across to our audience, because I think sometimes, you know, you feel like life is against you, but it's like trying to get through it. Could you just expand a bit more in terms of that time from retirement, transitioning to where you are now, how you got through those difficulties? And there would have been a lot of dark nights, I can imagine, a lot of nights where you don't know what's going on, where your life is heading, where you feel, you know, your worth and value is not valued anymore, and trying to galvanize yourself, rebuild yourself, and make a meaning of your life. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. I think what a lot of ex-footballers find when the career finishes, I can obviously only speak for myself, is a huge loss of identity, really, of always being known as a football player from a young age, and then what am I now? I'm not a footballer anymore. Where do I sit in the world, really? And I think in terms of, I didn't know myself emotionally, in terms of I had a real lack of emotional intelligence. I could never allow myself to be vulnerable. I was brought up in a football world where you try not and show weakness. You see speaking about your problems a weakness, which is of course a complete wrong attitude to have. So I think I got to a point at the end of my career where I was sort of not in a good place, probably drinking too much, pushing those that I loved away because I could never admit to being wrong, never admit to struggling. And it probably took that sort of breaking point where I just sort of didn't know where to turn, really. And it took speaking to people and using sort of advice platforms to speak and just to open up completely. And when I did sort of open up, allow myself to be a little bit more vulnerable, and it just all came out. And the sort of, whereas before, if I cried or I was vulnerable during my football career, I'd feel ashamed of myself. But it felt good to be able to do that, to let that emotion out. And it felt like real weight off my shoulders, and like there was so much more to me than just Luke the footballer. I was actually Luke the person, and I had other things to offer the world. And I think it was a real eye-opening experience, something that I feel that I had to go through to get to the other side of that, and to realise that there's so much more to life than just kicking around a bag of air already. Don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly grateful for the football career that I had, but being out of professional football now has given me that opportunity to do different things and try different things, which has of course been like, it's opened up my life completely. And it's, having gone through that, I should have dealt with it better at the time, but having gone through it now, I feel like I've grown as a person to go through that.
Yeah, you know, you've been reborn again. You've got, you know, a new purpose, Football Fun Factory. Tell us about that, and tell us, you know, what that means to you.
Yeah, so as I said at the beginning, it's something completely different, something I've never done before, but it's given me a real new lease of life, really, trying to grow this organisation, trying to offer our experiences to different children all over the country, all over the world eventually. And again, just to take away from that seriousness of football, really, that I was involved in and sort of took over my life to a certain extent. And it's just more, like you said, it's very unlikely that children are going to become professional footballers. There's only, 0.something% that get the chance to play.
0.6% last I heard.
Yeah, which is obviously a tiny minority. So what we're with 100% of children and trying to grow that love for the game, because everyone can love football, everyone can enjoy doing it regardless if you're lucky enough to become a professional footballer or not. So it's a real rewarding organisation to be involved in, and something I'm really cherishing at the moment, to be fair, and being part of an organisation that is offering these unique football experiences to really young kids.
Yeah, Luke, I could just sit here and talk to you all day. I really appreciate, what you're sharing, the knowledge, the wisdom, the experiences, and I think there's so much for us to take. But for our audience, if there's one thing that you could leave them with, what would you say?
I think the most important thing that I've learned in my life is the importance to sort of love yourself and understand why you love yourself. I think if you're capable of really getting to know yourself and really understanding yourself and falling in love with yourself, it gives you the opportunity to love those around you on an even deeper level. And it's probably the most important lesson I've learned in my life, to allow myself to be vulnerable, to know that every day is not going to be great, but if you still love yourself with all your heart, you sort of come through it quicker. You're open to talk about your problems when you haven't. So that's probably the biggest bit of advice I could give, for what it's worth.
Yeah, incredible. You can't give from an empty cup. You've got to overflow from that you've already got, and you can give to others as well. Luke, thank you so much just for spending this time talking to us. It's been an absolute joy just hearing your story from that young boy who first picked up a ball, played with passion, loved the game, and just the love of it got you through into professional capacity. You came into contact with some of the greats, and again, that love and passion was still there. And even in the darker days when it was club to club, retirement, that love and passion still got you through, and it's got you through to where you are today. So that theme to me has continued throughout your life. It's always been that love and passion. It's always been there. And, just to see the way you're so self-aware about it now and embrace it, it's incredible to see. And for you to share that with our audience as well, I think that means a lot for them to be able to take that at such an early age and be able to build themselves up for what the future holds. Before I let you go, how can people get in touch with you?
All the Football Fun Factory is all over social media, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that malarkey. So if anyone wants to message me through there, I'll be more than happy to sort of touch base.
Luke, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you again so much for spending this afternoon here with us. So, guys, there you have it. It's our live employer masterclass session with Luke Chadwick, former Manchester United player and now coach at the Football Fun Factory, head of the coaches, coaching other coaches and preparing young boys and girls for a world of being the best that they can. And Luke's demonstrated that for us clearly in his life and in this excellent interview here today. If you haven't done so already, guys, please do make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the bell icon so that you're notified whenever we upload a video. Like this video as well, we'll appreciate that. And again, thank you to all of you for tuning in. Thank you to our audience in Dubai. I know that you guys have had to stay up a bit later to watch, but thank you very much indeed. From Luke, from all the team here at the Change in Education Group, and from myself, thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.